Thank you for coming. My name is Kevin Centford and I work in the Student Services team. But that's got nothing to do with just now. The House asked me to be returning officer for elections. In the past, it's been also the first returning, and Ellen Hampton is behind there's the deputy returning officer.
Kevin, can you speak a little louder?
Yes,
sorry.
So the purpose of this session is question time for the by-election. And if anyone's unaware, the by-election, there's an election before the summer. Fill positions in the executive, any unfilled positions, then a by-election in semester one. So this is question time for the by-election. Coincidentally, we also have votes of confidence at the moment, so this is also managed to put together. So the format of this session, the part one will be the by-election question time, and part two, quite separate, will be the vote of confidence question time. How this will work is that each candidate in both will have 5 minutes to speak, and then you'll get a chance to ask questions of that candidate or side. So part one will be by-election. Will through the candidates, they'll have 5 minutes to talk, and then there'll be a question time. So for the by-election, there was one candidate for the ISA LGBT officer. His name is Kieran Anderson. He's here standing about. Kieran's come out. You'll have 5 minutes to talk. Kieran will take up to 5 minutes. And then we'll open for anyone in the room or on VC and ask questions. And I'll let you know. James, but 1 minute left. I'll cut you off. Won't we lose, but we'll cut you off if you're still talking to. Do you want to come up here and grab this?
Right. Okay, well, as you've already heard, my name is Kieran Anderson, and I'm not actually fully prepared with a solid speech, but I've got a good idea of rough idea of what I'm going to say. So, I'm running for LGBT officer because currently there is a need for our society for LGBT people, and currently all minorities, but of course it's not happening at all, because of course, as Heidi said, UHISA is not in the best shape. But one of the main things that I actually have an idea for is that we do need to get an LGBT society set up as soon as possible. There will need to be online engagement. I think that's quite important for all minorities as well, not like women and women LGBT and disabilities and international students. And the reason this is most important to have online engagement is because between small campuses, it's not really very easy for you to meet similar people. No matter what minority you're in. So I'm in SAMS, that's 120 people, and you get other small campuses like Blues Castle or Shetland. Very, very difficult to meet people with similar situations or conditions, such as in the case of disabilities or any other minority. And so I think it's important to talk about other minorities as well, because I am the only person running for any minority candidate. Yeah. So I think that needs to happen with online engagement, and I think it mostly needs to be addressed with localization. So with small campuses, it's kind of ridiculous to assume that it would be very easy to have common and regular engagement between, say, SAMS and Inverness, or Lewis and Perth, because they're worlds apart. It's almost impossible for us to have full engagement between those two campuses. So for example, freshers, just freshers that just passed like a month back now, I think it was. WHC and SAMS had a joint freshers event on the last day on Sunday, where WHC people came down and got to meet SAMS students, and as a result, allowed people to engage, meet more friends, and realise that we do have similarities within UHI. And as a result, for the first time, as I'm aware, in SAMS history, as a result of it, students were actually wearing their I Love UHI badges instead of their SAMS things. And that was, of course, because we actually had engagement from other campuses. But it has to be localised campuses, and because SAMS and Inverness, and as good as Inverness is, they don't have anything in common. They're just too far away from each other. And it needs to be done like that. And it's the same with the LGBT society when we finally manage to get this up and running. it needs to be up, it needs to be running smoothly, it needs to have a board of people, which is not going to be easy, but we'll get there. And I do think we need to address other minorities as well for that, which I'm more than willing to help out with if anyone would like me to do so. So there's basically the basis of what I've got to say. I'm wanting to warm up for questions for most of it, because if anyone does have any interesting questions, then I'd like to be able to try and answer them. So I'll leave it at that. You understand my view on this. We definitely need to get localised engagement between campuses that are near each other instead of trying to pretend that we could somehow have mass engagement all year round. It's completely impossible. So we have to do it like that. We need to get the LGBT society set up and running, and we need to get online engagement happening where we can meet other people online, and then because that will encourage cross-campus engagement with that. So these two things are the primary things that we need to get running once we get your houses sorted out, and it needs to happen as soon as possible. Be ever how long that will actually be. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. And I know that needs to be that long, but I'll open up to questions now. So.
Sorry, she was mentioned before we began this session being recorded, so great time to see. But yeah, if we could take questions now.
First of all, good idea. I like it. Second of all, I was wondering if you had any plans for raising awareness and promoting more tolerance throughout the colleges. I mean, I can't speak for Perth and Inverness, but Stornoway is a religious place, and a lot of homophobia is let slide. I could think of 1,000 examples off the top of my head, but I managed to get some Stonewall posters put up around our campus. They were taken down a day later due to complaints, despite the fact that we have religious leaflets left out on tables all the time. I think a discussion needs to be brought up in some of the smaller, more religious communities about how this kind of thing is basically not okay. You don't want to go running to a lecture every time somebody calls you a mean name in the corridor, when really the problem is the way people perceive LGBT people in the first place. I think tackling the underlying issue is better than just singling people out who have bad things to say, you know?
Yeah, so answer. Yeah, unfortunately, I actually never got the place to put that policy into my manifesto then, because I waffled on because I had so much to say. And yeah, I completely agree with you. And my manifesto that I submitted, which I don't think any of you are able to see it, although I could put it up because I've got a copy of it. I actually addressed that because LGBT equality in rural areas, especially, and in the Highlands, is pretty ridiculous. And yeah, you don't want to go running to a lecture every time it happens because it makes you feel like you're back in school. That's ridiculous. And that needs to be more addressed. And I'm still sort of working out how we address it, but it basically comes down to a point of when maybe even the freshers in these local campuses, anyone that is currently, in my opinion, a bigot, but we'll leave that there. They need to be told that it comes to respecting each other, because LGBT people, as far as I know, are perfectly capable of respecting someone's religion. I'm actually one of the, as far as I know, very uncommon situations where I'm religious and LGBT. So again, it really grinds my gears when I hear about either side attacking the other, and it's usually religious attacking LGBT. And sorry for the language. It's absolutely atrocious, and it needs to be sorted. And I completely agree with that. And actually, come lunchtime, we've got half an hour. Would you like to speak with me about that? Because I'd like to hear your ideas. That seems really good.
I would like to help.
Because it needs to be done. It's absolutely. Down with VR, it's not like an issue anymore. It's close to Glasgow. A lot more centralisation. Not really much homophobia. But yeah, Stornoway, I've been up there. I'm pretty sure there's 3 churches up there as well. It's
there's like 7 different churches.
Yeah,
I can't keep counting anymore.
Pretty interesting place. So yeah, that needs to be addressed, and I'm not exactly sure the best way to do it. I think freshers' events is probably the best way to run respect, but I definitely like to hear your ideas on it because you've seen it firsthand, whereas I'm not. So.
Stornoway doesn't have a freshers' week.
Okay, yeah, that needs to be talked about.
Or
as well.
a student association. So bear in mind these kind of things. The smaller campuses don't have stuff like that when you're coming up.
Yeah, it was actually because last year we didn't get freshers either. It was very lucky that we managed to get freshers this year at SAMS, and it was only because one student, Stacey Felgate, she managed to took it on all herself, and she did it. And if it wasn't for her, then we wouldn't have had it. I'm sure students are not going to. So yeah, that needs to be addressed as well. So many different issues, and we all need to sort them out at the same time. But hopefully we'll get it done. Yeah, I think I can ask something on that. I'll talk to you later. Yeah. Any other questions?
Any questions from VC, Judith?
Hi, yes. I hope, I'm not sure if you've covered this or not. I don't think you have, but I can't hear you well, so apologies if you have. A couple of years ago, we had an LGBT officer who was elected, and he felt very strongly about adding Q plus on the end, so it would be LGBTQ plus. I just wondered if that is something that you see as being an important thing to develop.
Okay, well, I of course don't identify as queer or Christian, and depending on which one you'd rather have as. If people want to have it on, then I think it should be on. I mean, how hard is it to have an extra layer in that? It's not. I mean, so yeah, I think that's fair enough to put on. I'm not like so incredibly thing about having it on because I think the plus is there to address it so that the acronym doesn't get massive. I think that's what the point is. So I'm not obviously myself not like massively. I don't see that as the biggest point. It's just a letter. But at the same time, if people are feeling it should be on, it's not hard to get it on. So yeah, I definitely support that. If I consider probably if one person would rather it be on there and nobody else is against that, yeah, let's have it on because who's it going to hurt? So yeah, that'd be my opinion on that one.
Okay, thank you.
My question is, I don't know if you are aware, but in April, a motion was passed at City Council to ask that only people self-identifying in liberation groups voted in the liberation officer elections. What's your opinion on that?
I actually agree, and of course the reason, of course it's difficult because people are like, well, what about people who don't want to come out? But I was talking to a colleague at Perth College, and they had a brilliant idea, and I think it's a similar way that other universities run. And basically, all elections are taking place online. So why can't we just have questions first asking a few questions, like your race for international students, gender, and then if you identify as women, right into you get to vote women's officer, and LGBT. Do you identify as LGBTQ plus or other? And then if they put anything other than that they identify as straight, let them vote, because that way people are being the people that are getting voted are being representative of the people that they're supposed to represent, and it's not hard to put on. I think it'd be a very good system to get up there. I'm pretty sure that other universities run it like that. That way we're not discriminating against other people, because of course voting should be taking place in private, so you don't have to worry about if you don't want to come out, other people seeing it, you do that. Because, I mean, of course, especially in the religious campuses, you were saying, like blues, people don't, there are probably quite a few people that don't want to come out because they're just worried about repercussions. And of course, that would put them against making sure that only LGBT people could vote in it, because they would think you'd have to come out. But we should make it in a way that you don't have to come out, because people aren't always ready when it comes to elections. I mean, your decision on whether you're ready to come out or not is not decided on a political, election. And to suggest that everybody will, to just assume that everybody will be out by the time they're in university is ridiculous. There are people at 46 that are still coming out. I mean, so yeah, frankly, I think that we do need to get that sorted out, and I think that just a simple only question before you go to vote would be a very easy way to sort that, and you're getting representation that way.
And it would be completely anonymous.
And it should be completely anonymous. I think that anything set up should be completely anonymous, and after the election takes place, I think maybe it would be a good idea that all records were deleted unless there was some sort of reason where it had to be buried under something and kept there for whatever reason, for legal reasons and that. But otherwise, it should be completely deleted from public face so that no one can get in and see it, because it's not anyone's business. So,
two questions I have from that. Firstly is, how can the process be entirely anonymous when we're going to have to double check the people voting are actually UHI students who are eligible to vote? Secondly, you're going to have some sort of tick box option where you put your sexuality. How far are you going to break that down? Am I going to have to tick the box that says lesbian when I'm just a straight dude who happens to be in a woman's body?
Yeah.
How far can you break that down?
Yeah, of course, because it depends on whether you want to identify as trans or not. I really think, I'm not sure, we would have to discuss about how the question would come down to it. I would have thought that a very, very simple question would just be, do you identify as anything other than straight, heterosexual man or woman? And if there are others who can break it down past that, because if it's and then if they just answer anything other than that, then they're in immediately, because immediately that makes them a minority LGBTQ+. So that would be my opinion on that. But of course, it would come later in discussion. We'd have to talk about it furthermore afterwards, because of course we need to make sure we get it done properly. And me just sitting in my room deciding, it'll be like this is not the best way to do it. So that would be. And sorry, what was your second question? I've forgotten.
How can it be completely anonymous when we're going to have to somehow verify that the people casting their votes are eligible to vote?
So once you've logged in on your student ID to the online platform that you can vote on, any subsequent answers that you give regarding what you voted is completely anonymised.
But that goes through an SQL database, which is still going to hold your student
I think this is
number.
one thing I think that needs to be changed. So I like the point that you brought up there. So of course, like, putting your details with student number and all that, and all the UHI details. And then after that, it should be a separate system where you're answering your minority status. And it shouldn't be that hard to put up. And so I think that that's the way it has to be done. So UHI and then minority status. And minority status as soon as the election's over, wiped. Because of course then it might allow for quick counting of numbers or whatever if they want to see how many people voted, and that's it. If it is a case where it will still stop people from voting, then we'll have to look at other situations. But as far as I'm aware, I think that is probably the best way to run it. But it's all about, I'll have to hear from other students, of course. I need to hear their opinion because otherwise I won't know. So thanks for bringing that up, because you bring quite a good point. And yeah, I think that needs to be looked at more. But hopefully it should be able to be done. I would imagine that there's like some tech quizzes in UHI that would be able to make it just disappear after the election. And an automated system, I would hope. So, yeah. And of course, outside that, you're always going to have people that might lie just to so that they can vote for a friend or that, but you're never going to get rid of that, unfortunately. It's something that will happen in all elections. There's always going to be a tiny bit of misrepresentation, but it's a case of getting it down to the minimal amount of representation possible, whilst not taking away voting rights.
Right, so would you extend that same principle to saying, like, only women can vote for the women's officer, only people in rent can vote for the housing officer? You know what I mean?
That's an interesting one.
Yeah, well, you know, if you start divvying up who can vote for what officer, you know...
The rent for the housing officer would be an interesting one. I'd have to look more into that.
Yeah, you know...
I think...
You know,
I think
looking to integrate people more by excluding people isn't maybe the best.
I mean, I don't know. Well, I think that the best way to do it is to talk to other students about it, to see their reason. The reason I come down on this side is because I find that most LGBT students I talk to are quite flustered by I think they're probably getting a bit paranoid, but flustered by the possibility of people that are actually meaning the worst things for a minority to go and vote on it, to vote for someone who wouldn't do a good job. Which it does happen now and then. So, and so you do have to watch for that. And I do think we have to look at various different. So the housing officers are a much more grey line area. It's a harder one to sort on. But I do think when it comes to women officer, LGBT officer, when it comes to the voting rights, it just have a minority stage, just to put in like 3 or 4 answers to then, and it won't even like mention which ones you've been allowed to vote, and that vote will just come automatically as you're cycling through the voting. That way there isn't any that way there isn't any perception that you're being like put into this box. If it's just done automatically without saying, and like if you finish that questionnaire and all of a sudden it tells you what you've answered and therefore you get to vote on this, then it might be a case of you're actually you might feel like you're getting put into a box by that point. But if it just does it automatically, it doesn't mention that, it's like, thank you for your details, and it just cycles through the votes and has it there. That way you're not going to feel like you're being divvied up into different groups. And of course, most students in these minority groups that I know, of course, if other students come forward to me, then I'll have to rethink things, but are saying that they would really rather that a system was put in place so that only people who are supposed to be getting represented by these people can vote. Does that answer your question? If it doesn't, yeah.
If you have one more question, then we are cycle.
I'll be quick.
Or 2 then.
I'll try to be quick.
I was just thinking there are people who support these campaigns and these groups who would not identify as this. You know, I'm straight, but I am 100% supportive of LGBT plus campaigns. I'm behind them all the way. I know men who would identify themselves as feminists. thinking about, like, Emma Watson recently did that speech, and she started the He for She campaign, explaining how the only way to go against prejudice and discrimination is to join together, and to have men on that identifying as feminists means that we can join together and show that there isn't anything wrong. It also means that the people who, taking feminism as one, right, normally, women would say it's men that have judgment onto women. By the men joining the campaign, it shows that there's nothing wrong with the man wanting to support it, because they should support it and make a change. So I would want to make sure that the officer representing LGBT, it being such an important group and something I'm so behind, I'd like to have a say on who I think would be good to have to support these people, because I think that's what it is, and that's how the future goes.
Yeah, I actually completely get your point, and I think this actually comes into the discussion of what the officers or representatives do. Are they officers for the campaigners of these groups, or are they supposed to be representatives for people in this minority? And if they are supposed to be people in this minority, I do still think it has to be brought down to them. But I do see a point actually, and maybe the possibility of opening up a liberation position, where it's the overall officer who speaks for campaigning in all of these areas to help with these officers, and that way everyone can have a vote in the liberation officer. I think that may be a very good idea, because of course, as you say, there are people who are not in a minority, or who are wanting to support another minority that they're not in, who, of course, they might not be happy if they can't vote in the LGBT representative, for example. But I do think it comes down to, of course, they're supposed to be an LGBT representative as opposed to a campaigner. But if we do have a liberation campaigner, I think that would be a good idea of doing it, because I do think you need to have these campaigns, and I think that it's very important to make sure you get people that aren't in these minorities to get into these campaigns and supporting them, because otherwise it just looks like someone feeling their own, and it looks like you're all divvied out on your own. So I completely agree with that. I think we need to encourage as many cross-campaigning between minorities and for people that aren't in minorities to get involved, because that way we ensure that it's seen that the majority of people support all minorities. But of course, back to the vote, it is a much more grey line area, because of course, are they a campaigner for these minorities to increase representation, or are they primarily a representative for this minority at the council and executive? And so what their primary position is before we decide what that is. And of course, as you can probably guess, I've fallen inside, it's more supposed to be a representative of the minority. But I think we need to have discussions about that, because I'm completely open to suggestions, because I'm not going to just close up my mind like, no, this is not good, because that's not a good idea. So thanks for bringing that up. That's a good point that you make. And
thank you, everyone. Last question.